All right, everybody. 3:15 in the morning, my time. Father's Day has just concluded, and once again, I needed to wait until I could examine as many facts as possible to come to some solid conclusions for you as into what happened on the first day of negotiations after this MOU was signed. And folks, it's a big deal what came out of this. So let's get right down to business and talk about it. Ooh, my goodness. Okay, let's talk about what's actually happening because this is very much bigger than another round of negotiations. The story is not simply that Iran is at the table. The real story here, you guys, is that Iran may have been brought to the table so the United States could buy time. I'm serious about this one, you guys. Um, it looks like they're looking for time to reposition and expose Iranian weakness and prepare for the next phase of diplomacy. Um, Really, the next phase of military action if diplomacy fails. Okay, and this is not anything to be gawking at because the facts that just came out today are unbelievable. This really is about Iran. It's about Hezbollah. It's about Lebanon. It's about Israel, the Strait of Hormuz. Certainly, it's about Saudi Arabia and the future shape of how the Middle East is going to end up looking like. It looks like pressure is shifting, and for the last several days, the public pressure appeared to be on Israel. Yes, but now the pressure seems to be moving back where it belongs, in my opinion, right? On the IRGC, on Hezbollah, and the Islamic Republic. Let me talk about the reasons why I feel this way and what's actually going on. First and foremost, we have to look at the Switzerland talks. They didn't begin like serious negotiations, folks, okay? And there's a lot of reasons for this. Let's go over some of the facts of what we know. First and foremost, the Iranian delegation arrived in Switzerland, but the senior officials didn't act like they were ready for real talks at all. When they entered the room, they saw the vice president, that JD Vance was already there. They reacted badly, which, by the way, I feel like JD Vance shouldn't have been there first, but that's a whole other story. I'm not, there's so much about this that I don't know. So, why they chose to be there first is completely up to them. Now, instead of sitting down and engaging, the senior Iranian officials walked out. All the lower level people were left behind to conduct what they would call technical talks. And that matters. Um, because technical talks are not the same thing as real negotiations. Technical talks oftentimes prepare the ground for future negotiations, but they don't settle the actual issue. So what they're basically doing is it's like a lower level team of people saying, we won't talk to you unless we have this type of water, or we won't have a conversation unless this framework is accomplished. It's like a bunch of lower level staffers getting together, deciding to put together the uh, the correct conditions in order for them to go to the table and have any real talks. Now, when the serious decision makers refuse to stay in the room, that tells us that the process is already unstable. And that's what we're seeing right now. They looked a lot less like, um, in my opinion, it looked a lot less like Iran uh, was coming ready to make a deal and more like Iran is trying to manage optics, in my opinion, while avoiding any type of real surrender. Now, I think this is significant. Why? Because Iran wants the appearance of diplomacy without necessarily making the concessions that diplomacy would actually require. The United States may be using the process to expose that reality. If Iran refuses to negotiate seriously, then In my opinion, the diplomatic box gets checked and the next phase becomes very much easier to justify. Now, that matters because the United States can actually say, we gave diplomacy a chance. Iran didn't want it, they refused. It's beginning to look more and more like this. Now, at the meeting, there were some big snubs that happened, and there's videos. You can you can see what happened on video, guys. It's pretty significant. The Qataris were supposed to be mediators, but even their behavior in the room appeared to send a message. They greeted others and ignored the vice president of the United States. In diplomacy, that's a that's not a small thing. That's a big deal. Protocol is very much a language. Whoever enters first matters. Whoever is greeted matters. Whoever is ignored, it's going to make a difference. Who walks out, it all matters. These moments communicate what people oftentimes understand as power or disrespect or leverage or even alignment in some cases. They're all signs. And the United States was very much being tested in public here. Iran and its mediators, believe this or not, appear to have been trying to project that America was not in control of the room. That's what was happening. Now, that may by the way, help explain why the tone changed so quickly afterward. I mean, President Trump appeared to move from a place of like patience to pressure. And we all know what happens when President Trump just completely shifts from a place of just being patient to now pulling out the stick and spanking these people. And that's exactly what happened. And actually, the president does this. He sets up a pattern that has looked like this carrot and stick kind of strategy. That's the term I think Tusi used. Uh, I think that's a correct assertion. The carrot was used to bring these people to Switzerland, and I think in many ways the message was diplomatic enough to get them in the room. But once they arrived, President Trump just pulled the full blown stick out. Uh, by the way, in case you guys didn't hear this, President Trump reportedly warned Iran, this is no joke, that if they close the Strait of Hormuz, they won't have a country anymore. He reportedly warned Iranian officials, and guys, this is a big deal. He reportedly warned Iranian officials that they might not even make it back home to Iran if they run away from negotiations like this. He also talked about the United States taking back control of the Strait of Hormuz if necessary. Now, when I say taking back control, meaning like collecting tolls to pay for military operations over there. The United States, according to what we're hearing from the president, may actually become the controlling guardian of the Strait of Hormuz if Iran threatens some kind of global energy uh, uh, um, arrest. I'm not kidding you guys. And this is significant. Why? Because we've talked about this on many occasions. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important maritime choke points in the world. I can't say this enough. It's not just about Iran. It's about global oil. It's about global shipping. It's about global markets. It's about global stability. That's what the president is thinking about right now. Iran has long used the Strait of Hormuz as a threat. They continue to use it. The message now appears to be if Iran chooses to weaponize Hormuz, the United States may remove Iran's uh, ability to use that weapon. That's a huge escalation, by the way. I think that this is no longer, in my opinion, just a negotiation over documents. I think this is pressure over things like territory and energy and shipping lanes and military control, which, by the way, that's always been the discussion here. Again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We don't know what we don't know. And I think that this part, this is the part that I have to keep talking about, because there's been a lot of people very upset about the terms of this um, uh, MOU. And I'm telling you, I've been one of those people very upset about the terms of the MOU. But I'm beginning to think that all of this is to buy time. Lindsey Graham showed up on one of these morning shows. I only was able to watch bits and pieces of it. Actually, I got to watch most of it, okay? Senator Graham basically said he spent 4.5 hours with the president today. After that conversation, he described what may happen if the deal fails. I'm not kidding you guys. He actually said that the United States could take the Strait of Hormuz by force. He said that that was a plan that was discussed. He said the United States could control it and charge fees to pay for the operation. He said that the United States could move to expand the Abraham Accords. He actually said would do it in 2026. And he said that Saudi Arabia could be brought in to the Abraham Accords. He continued to say that if Iran contests any type of U.S. control of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran would be obliterated, militaristically speaking. Now, I know that Lindsey Graham talks crazy sometimes, but he's not going to say that if there wasn't some kind of substantive talk with the President of the United States. And I'm guessing that the President of the United States probably wanted Lindsey Graham to say all this stuff, because the last couple days he's been putting Lindsey Graham in a really good light. Now it's kind of beginning to make sense. So if Hezbollah attacks Israel, the new policy may be that Iran itself is going to get hit. Matter of fact, the president actually said that in a tweet that just came out, believe it or not. So, in my opinion, this connects many, several major issues in one big, fat strategic picture. Okay? It deals with Iran's nuclear program, the Strait of Hormuz. It deals with Hezbollah. It deals with Lebanon. It deals with Saudi Arabia. It puts the Abraham Accords back on the rails. It very much deals with Israel's security, which is a big deal. And by the way, none of this stuff is a coincidence. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. The negotiations here, I think, were designed to buy time in the situation. I think they may be part of a larger plan to reshape the Middle East after Iran is completely weakened. That's what this is beginning to look like. The United States may be preparing, I'm not kidding you, for the failure of diplomacy while kind of giving diplomacy enough room to fail publicly. We've always talked about this as a possibility, because look at what we're seeing right now. Hezbollah is now a central pressure point. Now, I said that this would happen. Okay, it's no longer being treated as a side issue, and I predicted that this would be the case. Hezbollah, as I've said many times, is Iran's most important proxy on Israel's northern border. And now they're no longer going to be allowed to say that was Hezbollah, not us. The president basically said it in a post. I'm coming after the IRGC. I'm hitting Iran if their proxies continue on with Israel. And we already have talked about this, guys. Iran is very much making an attempt, a huge attempt, to use Lebanon as leverage in this situation. It shouldn't be a surprise. Sorry, guys, I got dry mouth and a little sleep deprived, but I've talked about the significance of this. I've talked about the fact that they're trying to derail things. Why? Because they're waiting for the 12th Imam to show up if they do the things that they're doing. That's what's going on right now. That's why Lebanon, in my opinion, is being inserted into the negotiations. It has to be inserted in the negotiations as Iran sees it, because they're trying to trade some kind of diplomatic cooperation for the survival of Hezbollah. They think that they can get Israel to stop firing. And by the way, I don't know if you saw Bibi uh, earlier today. This was a significant day in Israel. This was the 50th anniversary of Yoni dying while in Uganda saving a bunch of Israeli hostages. That man was a hero. Yoni Netanyahu was that man was a remarkable hero, loved and respected by so many people around the world. My understanding, by the way, is that uh, Uganda is going to put together a big statue for Yoni. I mean, that's a side issue right now, but it's it's very interesting that this stuff is materializing on a day that they're remembering the sacrifice that that man made. That's a very, very important thing that we cannot ignore. And you know what? I'm going to find this because I think it's really important. Um, uh, Let me look for it. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to find it because I don't want to waste your time. Um, Let me see. I want to find the exact line that BB made um, when he talked about his brother. I'm doing a little search here to find this out. Where is this? I can't find it. Anyway, um, let me just say this. According to the American calendar, when Yoni was killed, this was in the Entebbe airport, which we all know the story there. At least most of you do. If you don't know the story, you should look it up. He technically died on our calendar on July the 4th. I want to say it was July the 4th, 1976. But in their calendar, today is the day that they celebrate it. Well, you're watching this the day after. But what Bibi said when he gave that speech was really powerful. He basically said Israel is no longer going to stand still, which they never have stood still, while um, while Hezbollah continues to attack them. And Bibi basically said, I, on the anniversary of my brother's death, I'm here to say that the state of Israel will not be removed. God's going to back him. I mean, we really don't have to get much into the framework of that. But there is one aspect of this that I should mention that I think is really important. And when we went over the MOU, and you guys should go back and look at what I talked about when I spoke about the MOU, it did create a major problem for Iran in one respect, because the MOU includes language about ending military operations on all front, including Lebanon. It also refers to um, refraining from force against each other. That's a big deal. And that phrase becomes really important because if Hezbollah is treated as an extension of the IRGC, then Hezbollah is included in that framework. And if they continue to act that way, it's a ceasefire. It's a violation of any type of ceasefire. And it becomes more uh, uh, more leverage for the United States of America to do what it's doing. And then also, as I said just a second ago, Israel's position is clear. They're not leaving southern Lebanon. Okay? They're not, Lebanon is not being treated as a bargaining chip. It's not going to happen. Israel sees its presence there as necessary for the defense of the Galilee, for starters, right? And the northern community. And by the way, the other security zones they're not leaving. They're not going to leave portions of Gaza. They're certainly, especially in the Philly corridor, and they're certainly not going to be leaving that section of Syria that they secured. No way. Those three security zones are significant. They're not removing themselves from that. And by the way, as I said before, Bibi is still thinking beyond a temporary deal. He's not just talking about a pause in fighting, you guys. He's talking about the fall of the Islamic Republic. He continues to talk about the fall of the Islamic Republic. He talked about today making a promise to his dad before his dad died that he would literally watch the fall of the Islamic Republic, to watch the fall of the regime, that he would put it into effect. And he said it, the ultimate victory would come when the Iranian people would, in his own words, take their destiny into their own hands. That's what he says. Israel doesn't see the Islamic Republic as a normal government with one bad policy. I don't think that the United States sees them that way. Israel sees the regime itself as the central threat. I think everybody in the region sees it that way. Guys, the other thing that I'm seeing here as well is that the US military is actively sending a message. They just sent one around, think about this, around 10 US Air Force refueling tankers were reportedly operating across multiple locations in the Middle East. That was today. Well, technically yesterday, if you're watching this video. They also were able to spot, you can watch the patterns, cargo aircraft being active. And guys, refueling tankers, they don't put that much gas up in the air unless they're seeking to support uh, 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 fighter jets. Oh, sorry, sleep deprivation. Look, they support surveillance activity. They support all kinds of other things, repositioning, deterrent actions, all kinds of stuff. Guys, they support long range military operations in many ways. So when they're in the air, they're sending a massive message. I think what they're sending a message concerning is that some kind of strike is imminent. I think the president of the United States said enough is enough, and we're going to send them all a message. We're going to blow them. We're going to obliterate them if this nonsense continues. I think that's what's happening here. So I think that the uh, 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 Hormuz is being disrupted. I think that it's not going to be allowed to be fully closed. I'm seeing this happening right now. I think that Iran understands that fully closing Hormuz could bring an absolutely devastating response. The islands will get blown up. I think it's going to be a really, really bad thing. I also think that it's very, very obvious that the regime is being rejected and that the regime is being weakened in the area there, in the area of Iran. I think it's happening, and I think that the Islamic Republic has a legitimacy problem. I think that legitimacy problem is continuing to grow, and I also believe that there's bigger problems involved. Like we just had this whole situation with the World Cup, where somebody from the IRGC tried to get in to watch the World Cup with Iran playing, and we stopped them. And if that's accurate, that also is another thing that moves beyond diplomacy. There's so much here. And we know this. The regime uses this is what they do. They use fear to control Iranians, and that's exactly what they were doing with the soccer players. If you say anything negative, you do anything other than behave the way we expect you to, we're going to kill your family back home. That's what's going on here, you guys. The other thing I would say is that if we're going to see an uprising in Iran, that's going to require timing, and I think that everybody knows that. I think the president knows that. Okay, look, it may feel like a little bit of babbling. I kind of feel like I've babbled a little bit. but let me try to give this to you in the most concise terms possible. I think Iran is being boxed in on multiple fronts. I think diplomatically, yes, it's being brought to the table, but militarily, I think the United States is signaling that they're ready. I think economically, Hormuz is becoming the pressure point, but regionally, Hezbollah is being exposed as Iran's arm, which is something we've already known. I also think that politically speaking, Saudi Arabia and the Abraham Accords may be a part of the next phase, which, if it is, it's going to be historic. It's going to be a massive deal. And I also think internally, the Iranian people in that region continue to reject the regime. And I don't think a lot of people see that, but I think it's happening. I think it's very, very obvious. Israel is not backing away from Lebanon, guys. That's another part of this whole thing. Netanyahu is not backing away from the larger objective. President Trump, I don't think is offering carrots anymore. I think he's done with that. I think the stick has been pulled out. I think it's visible. Look, the real story is not whether Iran signs a document anymore. I think the real story is whether Iran is being forced into a corner, and I think they are. I actually think where the real story is happening right here is whether Hezbollah is becoming the next major pressure point, which I have news for you. It is the next major pressure point. It's there already. And I think the real story is whether the Strait of Hormuz becomes the literal line that Iran can't cross. And I think we're already there as well. I think one of the other real stories is whether or not the United States and Israel are preparing for what happens after diplomacy fails. I think they've been preparing for that from the very beginning, even with the weird exchanges that have been reported and all the crazy things that have been talked about. And from everything that I think, from everything we're seeing, I think that possibility is no longer theoretical. I think we've left from the place of theory now into the place of reality. I'm not kidding you when I say this, guys. I really believe that that's where we are now. So it's a hurry up and wait. Let's wait and see. Let's watch what happens. And I'm telling you guys, it's unbelievable. So you never know with all this stuff. This has been one big fat roller coaster ride. But I'm not so quick to say that America has abandoned Israel anymore. I was never quick to say that in the first place. As a matter of fact, from the very beginning, I've been one of these guys that said, we don't know what we don't know. Look at Trump's track record. Let's not be quick to condemn him. I think it's really important, and I stick by that. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens. Anyway, I'm going to go get some sleep. And I'm going to sleep for a good amount of hours, probably a solid 4 to 5 hours tonight. I'm excited about that. Anyway, love you guys. God bless you. Hope you're blessed by the contents of this video. Um, I hope it's cohesive enough. Let me know if it is, okay? Love you guys. God bless you.